We are very privileged to have an extremely special guest today in our studio. And she genuinely is a voice for the future. She's a voice for women, for diversity, equity, inclusion, for sustainability, for impact. She genuinely is bringing about a lot of her knowledge and connecting the dots of her life and projecting into the future. And I'd like to introduce her to you today to be able to take this thing forward. Nezha, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you, Tarek.
Nezha, before we get into our conversation, can you just tell us about you, yourself, who you are, and how you are making the voice into the future?
Sure. So I've been an advocate for women's empowerment for over 15 years, way before the #MeToo trend and way before Black Lives Matters, because when you talk about women's empowerment, you talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion automatically. So back then it was definitely a futuristic voice, and I hope today to also help shape up the future. So advocate for women's empowerment and ended up becoming an impact influencer as well on social media.
You have several entities that you look after. Can you tell us about your entrepreneurial journey?
Yes. So I studied a hotel management school, then did a bachelor in business, and at the age of 24, jumped directly into entrepreneurship. So my first venture was from 24 to 27. I developed 12 stores across Morocco of American brands that I was distributing there. And then I talked about my hotel management degree, because now I have Meshad Hospitality, which is my hospitality brand out of Morocco that I hope to expand internationally at some point. And so that's about my entrepreneurial journey.
Can you share with us how you are using your influence, your outreach, and all of those components for good, your social media presence for good?
So definitely I'm using my social media and have been using very consciously my social media to use it for good. And as a matter of fact, I also speak to the younger generation to sensitize them on the importance of their voice on social media, and that it can create good or bad influence on others, even at a very small level. So used my social media very consciously. The second thing which made me a popular influencer is that I have always used my social media as an advocacy voice, communication voice. So it was never a platform to make friends, to entertain friends. It wasn't a platform either to kind of like choose what to communicate on a personal angle or not. Whatever I was putting in there, for me, I always visualized the world watching it. And I was okay with that. And then I imposed to my family, my friends, people who 10, 15 years ago would tell me, oh, but you're going to put your kids on social media, or are you sure you want to share this part of your personal life? Or I always said, no, this is, or also sometimes they would tell me like, do you know, who do you have on LinkedIn, for instance? And I would say, look, across my social media, whomever invites me, I accept. Because it's like if I have a TV and I say, oh, I don't want this person to watch me. Either you have everyone watch you or you don't.
Yeah.
So I think that definitely supported the growth of my social media.
Your social media presence has an infusion of creativity, of art, of photography. It's very authentic and it's been built over time. Are those the kind of qualities and attributes you need to really build that quality of presence that you have?
Sure. You need to like creating content. And very humbly, right now, I know that I cannot jump on TikTok, for instance, because that type of content is not the type of content that I'm comfortable creating. So I love photography and I love writing. Instagram was just the perfect blend of taking a good picture and creating a comment that brings some food for thoughts on the picture. So because I was good at creating that type of content, then I was doing it with passion and consistency and getting better and better at it.
You touched upon leadership. You are a thought leader and you are a role model. So can you just share some of the work that you're doing in terms of helping women and helping leaders, not just women, to look into the future and the voice that you're giving them?
Yes, I like to help people project in the future, in their own future. It's important. So I have a book called Be Who You Want to Be a Leader. I give workshops in universities teaching students that are about to finish 16 years of education and prepare them to projecting in the future of their professional life. Some have chosen a path to become a lawyer or a doctor or a banker, but what type of lawyer you're going to be makes all the difference. And for that, I tell them to project themselves exactly 5 years from today, same day, same time, 5 years from now. And I ask them to imagine and envision what their day would be like. Are you in a warm place? Are you in a cold place? Are you in a plane traveling? Are you in an office behind? Are you, I don't know, in a court? Are you a doctor without borders? Are you a doctor in a clinic? Are you a doctor in a private? So just like this type of details that are linked to your lifestyle helps you project exactly what you can accomplish and how to accomplish it. So that's how I like to help younger generation just project in what could be the future of the next 5 years of their professional life. Now, when it comes to leaders, to CEOs, it's about helping them project on the future of their company without any limits. And the same goes with when I'm talking to these young people, I tell them like, forget your geographical limits, forget, what your parents have taught you, what education has taught you, project in your dream life. So the same goes with CEO, project in the dream achievement of your company. How do you want to be as a leader? What do you want to be recognized for? And so then once you make that projection, without putting limits to you, you realize that it's actually achievable. And then it's about creating an action plan. And that's when I call my friend Tarek to help them do that.
That's very kind of you. One of the things that when we are collaborating together, we talk about the fact that you are very strong on branding. And a lot of leaders that we see out there are not. They're not good at storytelling. They're not good at branding. So what is your advice to a CEO, to a board member who is a bit boring, very successful, but a bit boring, in terms of what branding and what storytelling and what kind of voice they need to have for themselves?
It's important, and we can look at it when we look at the global landscape of Fortune 500 companies. They've had so many CEOs, just like presidents in countries. And you have the ones that you remember over hundreds of years in history that left a legacy behind them. And you have the one that just went unnoticed. And I think to be a leader and develop a strong culture of leadership in your company, you need to not be shy about creating a voice for yourself, a brand for yourself. I'm just thinking briefly of Paul Pullman from Procter & Gamble's. He created a brand for himself in sustainability. And so he's the only one that I remember from the presidents of Procter & Gamble.
Can I interrupt you? I don't think it's Procter & Gamble. I think it's Unilever.
Yeah. Let's you're right. Yes. I'm just thinking just like that to Paul Pullman from Unilever. And yes, that man created a brand for himself in sustainability. He's been a speaker. He's been doing actions. There is the Unilever and there is the Paul Pullman, and both of them make a stronger match, impact, and so on. And yes, sometimes behind strong brands, you don't remember the people who have passed, who have led. And there is nothing, it's not that there is nothing wrong with building your own brand. It's actually, it serves the purpose of leading a company.
Yeah.
And I also work with executives at a senior level. They don't have to just be CEOs, to teach them to create that leadership and that branding, and to be a leader in their own industry.
It's interesting you mentioned Paul Polman. I am a great fan, actually. And one of the things that he does is he's very, very purpose-driven. And he built several of his companies, and he created what we call a massive transformative purpose. And whether it was Nespresso or one of the soap brands, every single business actually had its own purpose. How important do you think purpose is for these kinds of leaders, particularly in the world today, to identify themselves with something important? Sustainability could be one of them. Women's empowerment could be another. The future of water could be something else. How important is purpose in your view?
It's fundamental. And when we talk about the voice of the future, I was a voice of the future, seeing how important was purpose 15 years ago, when I started my career, to speaking to corporations and helping them define what their purpose can be. And when I started, throughout my international network, I could open some big doors in some French companies, US companies, and go and pitch the ESG, the diversity and inclusion. And the answers were like, oh my God, this is so nice, this is so sweet, but we don't have the budgets for it right now. And you're talking about multi-million, billion-dollar company. And 2 years later, I would start getting like emails, follow-up emails from meetings that I had before, saying, hey, by the way, are you still doing what you came and pitched to us? Because we would love to sit with you and see how we could collaborate.
Yeah.
So purpose, thank God, it's always been fundamental, but consumers imposed it to companies.
Yeah.
And social media helped with that. So this is the other side of what we don't like about social media, is that social media definitely did democratize advertising, reviews, marketing, news, media, and it gave a voice to consumers.
Yeah.
To say what they want and what they don't want.
Absolutely. And actually a lot of young people going into jobs for the first time are actually looking at the fact, what is the purpose of that company? Are they ESG compliant? Are they doing, so where are they going? And only then they will join, because the best ones only want to work with places where they can have connection with their hearts. So It's becoming really important. Now, let me take you back to your 15th birthday. You have a 15-year-old beautiful daughter. What advice would you give to your 15-year-old self?
I was already very intuitive in trying to understand what happiness is, and observing people just around me at my own level, and already understanding that having money was not it, and that you needed to have purpose, you needed to build a strong inner self. At 15 years old, I was observing that, analyzing that. And then at some point, I walked away from that. I walked away at the age of 23, 24. I'm like, God, you ask yourself, you're too philosophical, you should get out of this type of thinking and just, build a pragmatic life. And I got married, had my kids, started my first phase of business, which I told you, which was almost trading, getting franchises, selling, and I did that fast, and I did that well, because I'm a perfectionist. If I do something, if I'm going to be out of purpose, I'm going to do it well. And then I remember one day my dad called me and to told me, hey, I just wanted to tell you that I'm very proud of you, that, you've taken a good path and, you're succeeding your life. And I just wanted to tell you. And I hung up and I remember I just like looked at myself. I was driving an SUV in Morocco, looked at myself in the mirror, looked at the watch that I was wearing, looked at the handbag that was there, and I was going from one store to another. And I just questioned myself, what is it that am I doing that people should be proud of? Yes, I'm compliant to what society demands, but whoa, my dreams, like to create achievement and for people to be proud of me used to be much bigger. It used to be about changing the world. It used to be about working for the United Nations and doing humanitarian work and so on. And of course, being the only daughter of my dad, he just felt secure for myself. And by, I don't want to, take off the credit of my dad, who's a big humanitarian purpose, big purpose-driven person. But that's the thing. When it comes to your daughter, you almost don't want that path for her. You want her to be in a secure place, comfortable. And so that's what he felt for me. And that, I remember it was a trigger to completely re-question my life. And this is where, again, in my book, you explain what happened to me. At 27, I was futuristic enough to make a change that women make at 50. And that was amazing because it saved me a lot of time. I mean, I'm 40, so I still have 10 years before I was supposed to make that life change. So that's what has driven me to give me so much power and confidence to help others go through that change and to help them, direct them to purpose.
It's interesting how you reinvent yourself, and we need to find ways to reinvent ourselves. And often we become concerned with life and society and people's impressions on if we make a fundamental shift. So it's quite amazing that you made that change. Now, let me take you 10 years forward from today. And if we're in 2032 and we're now looking back from there, what has Nezha done in the next 10 years of her life?
Sure. That's a question that I can easily answer because I've been all the time, I call that design thinking, and I've been designing my life since the age of 15, like really planning and implementing. And sometimes things didn't happen as fast as expected, but because they have challenges and this, which is normal. This is life. This is what's exciting about life. And by the way, I always say life is not short. Life is long. People will tell you like, oh, life is short. No, life is long. It's a marathon. And it's a marathon, and you need to be preset for that marathon. So pre-planning is good. I turned 40 this summer, and I was so blessed to see that I am the woman that I wanted to be when I was 40 since the age of 20. At the age of 50, I have again so much more to accomplish. I have a project that is dear to my heart and that I really want to accomplish in the next 5 years, but if it doesn't happen in the next 5 years, I will make it happen in the next 10 years, which is to generate 1 million employment for women in the Arab world. So that's an achievement. A PhD on the rising role of women in the Arab world. That's another goal that I have. And then what I want to achieve in the next 10 years is to institutionalize what I have created with Women Choice, the organization, and to see that it is something that can live for 100 years behind me, that already in 10 years doesn't need me at all, that there is a group of other women, young women that are active in that organization, and that organization is creating the impact that it needs to create without needing Nezha Alaoui to wake up to create it at my own small level every day.
Yeah. I feel very blessed and very proud that we are working together. I run a future company and you run Women's Choice, and we came together, and the fusion of these two was Future Choice, which we have created together. What would you like us to achieve together?
Look, it's very clear. You define the future, you help companies create their own future and transform in the future. The future counts women in these companies, counts women in a strong part of society. So what we are creating here is to make sure that that future is well driven with the purpose, with the women, giving also the women that extra push, extra training, extra support that they need to get to that equality that they're thriving for. Just because it's like that, it's like that. Even for instance, when I have conversation about Black Lives Matters and people telling me in New York, yes, but come on, I mean, they have the same chances, everyone is equal. It's not. It's like starting a race where one started 100 miles ahead and one is 100 miles before, and you like go, okay, and it's not we're not on the same race. And so that's the thing with gender equality. Just historically speaking, men have been working and leading work missions since like 1,000 years. Women really went strong after the 70s. So there is 2,000 years on the Christian calendar and a little less on the Muslim calendar and a little more on the Jewish calendar of inequality. And you cannot just solve that over few years and it's just to make sure in that future vision that we're creating that equality.
It's amazing you say that. I use the word equity and I keep enforcing the word equity because to me that is the bridge, the equity piece, the fairness piece, the empathy and connection piece. Because yes, we can logically agree on a lot of things, but unless there's that empathy, compassion and equity, we won't be able to bridge where we are trying to go. So what's your advice to men? And what should us men do? I'm a compassionate, empathetic man, so it's easier for me. But out there, what do you recommend?
First of all, to not feel threatened by all these talks, initiatives, and so on, because at no point they are in a purpose to create an inequality in another sense. Second of all, to be part of it, because every man has a mother that he loves, a daughter, a sister, and they want these women to feel empowered. And the third thing is really to support it, because in reality, I've also seen in women in certain parts of this world, more in the Western world, kind of like having a feeling of revenge towards man and blaming man for everything that is happening to them that has nothing to do with the man or anyone, like for all their insecurities, blaming men for their insecurities, blaming men for their failures, blaming men for their challenges, when in reality, like life is about challenges, failures, learning, standing up on your feet, and so on. So, and I don't want to see that. So for me, when I'm working on women's empowerment in New York, for instance, it's about women's financial empowerment, so that the relationship between men and women gets more peaceful.
So Nezha, if you look forward now and you look into the future, what is the voice that young people need to have? And then what is the voice that women need to have? And lastly, the men. And what's your advice to them?
Sure. So my advice to you is take the time to know who you want to be in order to build a life that is fitted with your personality, with your potential, and with your goals. Because if you just go in a path that is not really related to your inner self, you will have to walk out of it at some point, and you will find a lot of struggle in that path. To women, I am telling you to not shy away from finding your own feminine leadership. Leadership does not mean that we compete with men or that we need to look like men or replace men. Feminine leadership is a leadership that our mothers and grandmothers have had for a very long time in society. They give back, they help others, they lead communities. And so it's just to take this and to translate it in what could it be in a work related environment. To men, I will say to keep thriving, to continue the path of your own leadership. Creating a space for women doesn't mean that you have to step down. On the opposite, we want to be strong together to create an environment that is more nourishing for the younger generation. To men, I will say to create more purpose in your very successful financial lives.
It's a wonderful answer. What a privilege to have this voice for youth, for women, and for men. And I feel, as I said earlier on, very blessed that we are partners and we have a mission together to achieve a lot of great things. And as a voice of the future, she has shared and connected her dots of life. And you will see a lot more of these happening. Nezha, thank you very much indeed for this. And it's been a real privilege, a real honor.
Next time I will interview you.
Next time you can interview me, absolutely, with pleasure.
Thank you.